Good evening. Good evening. My name's Jane Hoffman. I live in Duluth, Minnesota. And this has to do with having an adult child who's autistic and also an Army veteran. And I am the mother of this 26-year-old child. So I want to start out by saying that my son, who would not speak to me last year for 144 days in 2023, came home to live with me when I invited him to live here for free, April 8th through around November 8th. What happened was, over the course of months, he seemed to be enjoying himself the first few months, and he got out early because he saved like 90 days of vacation. So technically, April through June, he was being paid by the Army. He was not in a financial debt. He had adequate money to help himself. And he would make his own meals. He would go on long walks. He didn't really look for a job. And he found a car to buy around September 1st. And he bought a reasonable, decent used car around September 1st. I paid for the car insurance because he seemed reluctant to do it himself, and he didn't understand the importance of it. In other words, he didn't know it was legal to. He knew it was illegal to not buy insurance, but I try to emphasize certain things, like if you take a trip to the store or to Walmart, or even if you go out to eat twice a week, you still have to buy insurance because there can always be an accident, and then it will cost you a lot of money if you don't. So I bought the insurance, and then it seemed like in early October he was interested in starting to work. So he went on a few interviews and applied for a few jobs. And then all of a sudden he stopped. And then he bought a boatload worth of alcohol, like 5 giant bottles of hard liquor, plus a 24-pack of beer. And I was startled and confused. Like, it's not like I have 5 guys living here. Like, that's too much booze, and it's a poor investment. People lose their brain cells. It's not a good outlet to solve personal problems. He has a problem communicating anyway. And even though he said he was my best friend, quote unquote, I'm his best friend, I'm his hero, that he didn't really share his feelings that much. And then when I try to get information out of him, he would say stuff like, I really don't know how to answer that question. Or then I would tell him some things about my day, and then he'd say, like, why are you talking to yourself about yourself all the time? I said, well, I'm not talking about myself. I'm just making fill-in conversation. So then there were times where I felt like I left him alone. But then, like, the last 3 weeks he lived here, he would stare into space for 5 hours in his room. He wouldn't go on his computer. He wouldn't, like, read a book. It was just disturbing to me how much time he wasted. And I do have a type A personality, and I work 2 jobs, and I didn't charge him rent. But on the other hand, I wanted him to do something external that was fulfilling for his life, like take an art class, take a computer class, get a job, so you can deal with people. And then he also dropped his 2 best friends of 8 years after going to London with them in May. And I saw a lot of red flags, and I tried to encourage him. But then the last week he lived here, which was a Monday, I had a tooth pulled on a Monday. I had to pay the rent. I did ask him $60 for Spectrum, but he didn't acknowledge that. And he came home like at midnight on a Monday night, and I gave him a 30-day notice because he had blocked my phone. I don't consider myself a nagging mother. I would text him twice a day and I was gone from the house 70% of the time. I do overnights plus sub in a school, so I don't feel like I was, breathing down his neck. Plus, the last month he slept till 3 p.m. every day. So there was just a lot of misinterpretation. And he told me once that if I ever stop paying all the bills, including toilet paper, I am no longer his mother. Like, even if I charge him $5 for toilet paper or ask him to go buy a soda, that's that. It was a black and white interpretation that I'm no longer his mother. Now, for a 26-year-old who lived on a remote army base in the desert and was able to save a ton of money for 3 years, plus he had lived with me from 2020 to 2021 and saved another $20,000. I didn't pressure him. I took on the role as the hero. But the fact of the matter is that, I need some, I didn't need nurturing, but it would have been nice if he would have acknowledged things. Like, my favorite cousin at 82 died, and he used to visit there twice a year all the time. He wouldn't go to the funeral. My sister Nancy died. I invited him to go to San Francisco. He turned it down. He just was doing his own thing and he didn't care. So I'm the mom, and I didn't try to dictate his choices, but I would probe him about what his plans were. And then he lost his temper on election week, and he started packing his stuff up at midnight when Kamala Harris was in the process of losing, and I was already having a bad night because I couldn't sleep good. And then, so he moved 2 things out of the house, the desk and the chair, into his car. Then 3 days went by, nothing happened. And then I came home at noon from a work training, and he was sleeping in bed till 1 o'clock. And all of a sudden he jumps up and starts taking the bed apart. I also want to mention that he does have autism, and he was originally diagnosed with Asperger's disorder, but they took it out of the diagnostic manual. So he did have oppositional defiance disorder, which probably explains a lot. But the fact of the matter is he took his bed apart. He put everything in a box because it was a metal bed frame except for the bigger pieces. Then he tried to stuff the top cushion into his compact car. And then he left. And I put a national report out for a missing persons hotline type thing, and they traced his car to Ohio and Virginia, which he said he always wanted to live in Virginia, which is fine, but he didn't tell me. And then he changed his phone number 3 days ago. So I have just published a book I released it October 9th. It took 2 years to write. It's about my life in the third person. And I've already lost my daughter to a heart transplant in 1992 on Christmas Day. And he was my only other child. And I do have anxiety about the way things ended between us. So if anybody has any advice, could you please help me? Not to mention the fact that people are probably going to yell at me for putting all this information on YouTube. But you know what? I'm a desperate mother. And I'm not going to call the National Persons Missing Hotline anymore. I know he's in Virginia. I don't know his address. I don't know his phone number. I pray that he's safe. Virginia has higher crime than Minnesota. So I hope he makes good decisions and not leave important things in his car that it might get broken into. And I had to cancel the car insurance because it only covered living in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So I don't have a future with him at this point, and I'm not ignorant. He's a very close-minded person, and it's going to take a miracle from Jesus Christ, the Lord Almighty, to solve this problem, but I'll always be there for you, Lauren. I love you as a mother. You're my whole world. It doesn't matter the age you are. But I can't go through another separation like I did in 2023. I just can't do it. It's too much for me. So I'm just going to have to bury my feelings. Okay? I love you, Lauren. Call mom.